I don't know anybody who owns a house. I'm even thinking like adults as well. And I know a lot of adults. Like I have a wide range of like friends, and I'm even thinking about my adult friends who could even be like 40, 30, you know, 50, like, because even when I think they own their house, no, their partner owns the house.
The concept of anyone owning a home under the age of 35 feels like just that, a concept. Because who's paying for all that? Hey guys, what's up? It's Emergency and welcome back to my channel. And today we're talking about housing. You know, the place you live, you love, you sometimes share with roommates you don't know, and sometimes pay half your paycheck to live in a room with a shared space. And we previously talked about the economy and the job market on this channel, and more specifically how it impacts Gen Z. So that's nothing new. And because everything is so closely connected, we have touched on housing, but it's time we get deeper into it and see not only what the state of housing really is like for Gen Z and some millennials too, but more so getting into how and why we are in this position. And the answer to that may just surprise you. But for this one, we are running it back, and I'm turning the mic back over to y'all. Because similar to the 80-hour work week video, if you haven't seen that, you should have to go check that out. I did some interviews to hear directly from y'all for what y'all's experience is with this. Now, it's literally not news if you've been conscious over the past few years that the housing crisis is getting worse and worse. And like most evil, nefarious, sinister things that happen to us as Gen Z, we tend to like to joke about it. You know, the classics like, I'll never be able to afford a house because I keep spending $10 on a matcha every day. And it seems pretty standard that a lot of people have resigned the thought of ever really owning property. And that feels like the general consensus, at least online. But we wanted to talk to people who have a range of housing situations to see exactly what's out there for us and what is possible. In these interviews, we tried to capture a range of what's out there, like mostly renters, some owners, and some that don't necessarily fall into either category, but may still have homeowning aspirations. Now, I don't need to tell y'all that there are frustrations within Gen Z, which we've definitely talked about in the recession video and the 80-hour workweek video, because conditions have changed so much, and the lives that we were promised if we worked hard and got our degrees just simply does not exist anymore, and we know this. But I think seeing where we all are on this journey, seeing alternative perspectives and lifestyles than ours, we can learn and make the best informed decisions for our own personal lives. Because I think the internet has skewed a lot of people's perceptions of what it means to be successful, or at least on track as a young adult. With people on social media flexing houses in their early 20s, these crazy apartments and living situations, which can make you feel like you're not doing enough, or that you're behind or have your priorities wrong. But I really hope this video gives some perspective as to what the reality is offline, because none of us are on the same track or timelines, but all of them are equally okay because we are all moving at our own pace. And I do want to also add a quick disclaimer that this video in no way is endorsing that homeownership is like the right way, because as we're going to see in this video, that's not necessarily the right path for everybody, and not everyone needs to aspire for that, and that's okay, because housing can and will look different for all of us. And while the type of housing can vary from person to person, the act of having housing should be consistent for everyone. And unfortunately, we live in a time where that is not a reality for many people, and housing prices, whether for rent or to own, are soaring. And again, we're literally always talking about this kind of stuff on this channel, and oftentimes when we do, we reference the quote-unquote powers at be for largely being at fault for the conditions that we're living in. And luckily this time of year we get the opportunity to influence who those powers at be are, like in Virginia. I don't think I've ever done a political ad before, but I do think the times that we're currently living in do require it. And that's why I'm excited to partner with Indivisible on this video to remind any Virginian watching to not only make sure that you're registered to vote, but to also vote early, or make sure you vote on this election day, November 4th, for Virginia Democrats. This is one of the highly contentious elections this year because Virginians have the chance to not only flip the governor's but lieutenant governor seats from red to blue. And as someone who has lived in the DMV area and currently have friends and family still there in a time where it feels like the federal government is failing us, it's more important than ever to have our local and state governments fighting for us and voting for a pro-democracy governor. Virginia, your future is on the ballot. Early voting is open now, and election day again is November 4th, so make your plan today and make your voice heard. Thanks again so much Indivisible for sponsoring this video. Now let's talk about the rise of the renters market. In the good year of 2025, it's safe to assume that the majority of Gen Z are renting or living at home with parents. But surprisingly, there is a small percentage that is creeping up there of home buyers. I mean, we are the youngest generation of actual eligible home buyers, so it makes sense that we aren't taking up a huge percentage. But what is interesting to note and less tangible to find actual results in is seeing these sentiments of home buying within our generation. Is that still something in our milestone goals like other generations, or are we just nixing it completely? And as I spoke to some of y'all, it seems like there is some hope for homeowning just further down the line.
Because I'm 22 and I'm still in school, it feels like out of reach, the whole I would love to go back to thinking small town, out of the way kind of deal. Also, like, I work and go to school here, so it's just so not on my radar. It's not something that I think about.
I want to own property. I absolutely do. Unfortunately, my biggest barriers are financial barriers. As an adult, I've never really had a whole lot to my name. especially not with working restaurant and retail my entire working career.
I do want to own property. I think the only thing that's stopping me right now is time, because I'm young and I need to build up, credit and then also just finances in general. But I want to own property in like a career sense, business-wise, like an office space.
But this does differ from previous generations where things like family building and home buying were almost expected in their 20s and 30s.
Crazy that Gen Z's parents bought their houses when they were younger than Gen Z was. Like, for instance, my parents, when they were 21, purchased a home. I'm 23 and live in an apartment. And rent's going up. It's not going down. So between home prices going up, rent increasing, the just overall cost of living going up, it's kind of crazy how much times have changed from previous years, where in the early 2000s, you could be 21 years old, fresh out of high school for a few years and be able to purchase a home. But now today, you can go to college, get a degree, and not be able to find a job, and let alone get a house, because you're living in an apartment with probably one, if not multiple roommates.
As of April 1st, 2025, baby boomers, or the boomers, which are those aged around 60 to 75, account for around 42% of all home buyers in the US, while millennials are around 29%, meaning that boomers own the most amount of property out of all of the generations alive right now. And maybe that's because they're more responsible, maybe because they've been on the earth longer, or maybe because they're able to buy a house for like 25K, maybe a little jig, and some toothpicks, and now they can be landlords.
First of all, they need to downsize. Part of the problem is that none of the boomers want to downsize, and they are in these massive houses, and the market is completely trashed because of it. And people need to stop counting out Gen Z in general, which is also why I love your channel, because people need to stop counting out Gen Z. Like, yes, sometimes we are the problem, but a lot of the times we're not. Every generation has their problems, but we're doing a lot with what we're given. We were handed a crappy housing market. We were handing a crappy economy. We were handed bachelor's degrees that don't get us jobs. And it's like, we're doing the best that we can, and we're still succeeding anyway.
Hey everyone, I was just talking to one of our managers here who's well into his 60s and just bought another house that they're going to plan on flipping to make money on. And when I mentioned that my generation has next to no probability of ever being able to afford their own homes, I was told that that's just a mindset that we're getting ourselves stuck into and that we need to think outside the box.
According to Realtor.com, mom and pop landlords, or just independent landlords, not tied to a development company, own the majority of housing real estate in the US. So it is independent individuals who are landlords and not just Blackstone. Take that as you will. Like, renting has always existed, but if you think about it, rent is kind of like the OG subscription service. Like a monthly charge to have a place to exist and live in. And housing has become so commodified, which is so nefarious. My hot take is that housing should be a human right, and the fact that it's only getting harder and harder to grasp is, again, nefarious. And renting, as we know, is not all fun and games, because there has been some serious rent inflation, even in the past 5 years alone. According to NerdWallet, still rents are 36.2% higher than before the pandemic. And the dramatic increase from before the shutdown to now is very hard to grapple with, especially considering how the job market is right now and how minimum wage hasn't significantly gone up in years, mixed with the fact that the places that people are renting that are having the rent increases are not getting any newer or any more premium. So I'm like, why are we doing all this? So with rent rising and salaries not so much, it's kind of hard to abide by the gold standard rule of your rent being a third of your monthly paycheck. And if that's the case for just renting, owning is a whole other ballgame.
So right now I'm living in a homeless shelter. I didn't know there were so many different types of homeless shelters. The one I'm in right now is dorm style. So it's a renovated warehouse. And then the main room, it has really little cubicles with a bunk bed in each cubicle. There's 85 women here. Staff is great. It's a women only shelter. They have great amenities. I'm in one of their little office rooms now. And the shelter I was at before this was a renovated Motel 6. So that one was nice because it was just 2 people to 1 room and you had a private bathroom. But because of the homelessness crisis in Los Angeles and funding issues, that homeless shelter closed. So that's why I am where I am now.
Let's debrief for a second. There's been some speculation for a while now that short-term rentals like Airbnb and Vrbo have contributed to certain neighborhoods' families not having as much of an ability to buy a single-family home as before. And while it definitively is not a main driver for the housing crisis, it's something that some cities like Irvine and California are pushing back for to let families have a chance at buying homes first. Not everything is all doom and gloom. And again, this is not saying that renting is all bad either. Like, I am a chronic renter, and the majority of young people living in a big city are. That's just the reality of the situation. And while yes, it may be some people's only option, renting is a very valid choice, even if you do have prospects of home owning. And we've heard some of those pros to renting directly from y'all.
So in my mind, if you asked me earlier in the year, I was like, I want to buy something. So at least my mortgage would be really stable so I can stay kind of near all the busy things. But now I'm more so like, oh, I don't mind renting. If I want to like pick up and leave and go somewhere else, it's so much easier. I just broke my lease recently, so I can just sign a little message like, I'm leaving. And they're like, okay, cool. But with a mortgage, you do have to be a little bit more conscious of like your payments. Are you gonna get renters to go there? I think the responsibility with renting is better for my situation now, but I like the idea of owning in terms of the control of nothing's gonna change here in my little cabana, whatever it is.
It's interesting. I've never really dreamt about owning a house that much. Maybe one day. I really like the convenience of renting and kind of the open opportunities with renting. You could go anywhere you want. If you want to live in a different state, you can just pack up and move. And when you have a house, there's a lot more commitments, and maybe it's just settling down that I don't want, but I don't really look forward to owning a house.
We'll get into the hidden costs of home ownership soon enough, and it's very valid to not want to deal with that. Because renting means you can hit up your landlord to fix things and not dealing with maintaining a property because that's just like not your job. Owning a property, on the other hand, is not just the price tag on the house. There's so many other things that go into it that people just like don't talk about, and it's a lot of time, work, and money. And heavy on the money if you want someone else to go and do those things for you.
I kind of have like, that's my hot take, is I don't think renting is something where you're putting money into nothing. You're exchanging your money for a place to stay. Like, I know people are very like, I know the landlord comment, I know it's an exchange of a service. I'm like, but we're paying your mortgage. But like when you need a new refrigerator, I still go to my landlord. I had a white refrigerator when I moved in. And I called them, I was like, I don't want a white refrigerator, which is a stupid request, really. But I didn't want my friends to joke around me having a white refrigerator. And my landlord went and bought a refrigerator. So that's something I can do as someone renting. But if I was my own landlord, I bought my house, I had to just go and buy a refrigerator.
Okay, so we have a baseline for renting and rentership, but what does it look like to actually own? And I think a good way to start this section off, I know this is kind of academic, but is to look at this graph. Like, we all know how expensive home ownership is. And while I do think that the dollar is adjusted for inflation in this, it's still so crazy to see the drastic and dramatic increase in housing over the last 60 years. Like, this is from the US Census Bureau. So it's understandable why people feel hopeless at this prospect with everything else considered. But again, Gen Z is now at the age where some of us can join the homeowner group. And let's review a little bit of what that's like. First thing that shocked me when I was learning about all of this are really those hidden costs of homeownership. Like, owning a home is not just paying a monthly mortgage. Like, that would be nice. The main three things you have to keep in mind are property tax, fees, and homeowner's insurance. And especially if you're buying a house right now, the property taxes can be pretty expensive since it's sort of relative to the price that your house was valued at when you made the purchase. And since the homes right now are valued very highly, I'll let you do the math. The fees part are only really if you have an HOA or homeowners association or buy a condo, but that's still a monthly payment on top of your mortgage that you're paying every month. And the homeowners insurance is required for you to have in order to get a home loan. But although that doesn't cover natural causes of damage, or as this article puts it, acts of God, which I guess is pretty all-encompassing. So for all of those things, you do have to get an additional insurance on top of that. And that's something to consider what state you're buying in. Like, if you're living in LA, there are houses that are majorly expensive, and part of the cost has to go to fire insurance. And of course, lastly, I do have to harp on this one more time, just any maintenance or fixings or renovations or upgrades to your house, whether that be lawn services, routine maintenance like plumbing, electric, gas, roofing, maybe there's mold, pests, Wi-Fi issues, etc. Like, you're paying out of pocket for all of that. And many homeowners actually advise that on top of that, you keep a emergency fund for maintenance on top of the monthly mortgage and down payment for the house during the process of saving, just so you can be prepared ahead of time in case any of those emergency things do happen.
I guess a little tidbit of advice I can offer, because when I bought my house, that was like a huge worry of mine. I was like, what if this thing breaks? What am I gonna do? And then I was watching some YouTube video and I was like, this makes perfect sense. Why haven't I been doing this? They were like, for, I don't know who came up with this, but basically the average cost of like issues in a home is something like 1% to 2% of the value of the home per year. And so you save a 12th of that every month along with your mortgage. And then you have and that's how you create like a home savings fund.
And then another aspect that impacts homeownership is the whole concept of like the dual earner. Like obviously carrying the burden alone of paying a monthly mortgage can be hard to bear. So it makes sense why buying a home was usually the next step for a married couple as opposed to a single person. Not to say that it's not possible for anyone else, but yeah.
It's harder to buy a house by yourself. And I think that having two incomes massively allowed us to buy a house. So I think it was my mentality about like the clock starting from marriage. I think it was also my upbringing, like buying a house was always going to be a thing that I was going to do. But I think it kind of got accelerated by me getting married, and that like allowed it to be more real, because if I was by myself, I would be in an apartment. I'd probably be with my parents. That's the other thing. We both lived at home until we got married. So that was something else that we did to like save or whatever.
So my plan is to own property. I think I've changed my, I guess, like more rigidity with being like in the States. Because I was in like a very hardcore, I had a realtor, everything was approved for like a really good loan and had a great down payment that I was saving for a few years. And I was being outbid, like, because I'm also going into the housing market as like a single woman. Like my income is very strong in tech, so I'm very comfortable with my income and my savings, but I was being outbid, I think at one point, $60,000. I was already over asking and they went 60 over me to get a home. And then I was thinking, it's not that serious. The roof needs to be done and they don't have a washer and dryer and there's radon in the basement. That's not worth paying $4,000 a month in mortgage, even though if it's stable. If I were to lose my job, tech is very, the AI bubble and things are rough right now. So if I bought my house and got laid off, I'm like in the worst position.
And that doesn't even get into the privileges of owning a home. Because of course, buying a home is a privilege. Having parents that would be your co-signers, pay your down payment in closing, or I'll even know the process in the market. There's so much to know when it comes to actually owning a home that it can be incredibly overwhelming if you don't have someone in your corner that knows what they're doing, or you yourself don't know the process or what you're doing. Even in this article by CNN stating that Gen Z are becoming homeowners, the people that they interviewed had that support from their families. And that's like no tea, no shade, because regardless, it's still a huge responsibility. But obviously having a support network to help you or even foot the bill for some of, if not all of these costs is definitely a help. And in that same CNN article, quite a few of the young home buyers credit their parents and families for the help. And even one of the buyers credits the seller for helping them with the closing costs and even some of the maintenance before actually selling the property. Which just goes to show that, like, yes, if we don't have like elder vultures and greedy people as the gatekeepers of selling, then maybe, just maybe, it could be possible for more young people to start buying. But that's neither here nor there.
Sometimes like you'll see those posts on Twitter where it's like 23 owns home, fully paid off car, like that like whole thing. And like I'm always very candid about this. I own a home because my mom was able to help me own a home. And I think having transparency around that is really important. I'm not gonna like sit here and pretend like I did that by myself, because I didn't. That wouldn't be honest. And most of the people I know my age that do own property are in a similar situation to me, where like they also experience and benefit from that privilege. With that privilege comes understanding that that is not the norm and that is like an abnormality. But I always try to be as truthful about that as possible, that like I own a home, yes, but I also own a home because my mom has been able to help me get that home. Like she was like my co-signer on my house and everything like that. So technically like we both own it.
Let's talk about those of us who were actually raised, you felt like you were kind of rich. You had a McMansion, 3, 4, 5 bedrooms. You went on vacations to other countries. Your parents had nice cars. My dad drove BMWs. My mom had big cars, Denali, Land Cruiser, best car ever. Stand by that. You kind of want it for nothing. You got the new iPod every Christmas. Very privileged, right? But now you're like, oh, I went to college. I actually went to grad school and I'm living in my mom's house.
As most things, some people just have more privilege when it comes to housing security and home ownership. And I do want to say that it's a very American thing to want to live individually, especially individually while you are young. Like, the whole idea of financial independence and stability is the crux of the good old American dream. But for many cultures, it actually is the norm to live intergenerationally and communally. But we currently live in a Western individualistic society that perpetuates the idea that to own a home, especially if you are young, is a major flex. It's like you're just doing something right, following the blueprint to be the ideal adult and the model citizen. Even though that blueprint might not be as vibrantly blue anymore, it might even be just a little bit torn up in age with the times, but it's still considered to be like what you should be doing, especially after you've graduated college and hopefully have earned your first job. But as we know, in reality, especially nowadays, even if you did land your first job, most positions don't pay you enough to actually allow you to pay off a house comfortably. And this sort of brings me to the conversation that we've had actually in another video talking about the rise of Gen Z living at home and the stigmas around that. Because while it definitely is more normalized now, at least within Gen Z, it still almost sort of feels looked down upon coming from other generations if you are in your 20s and living with your parents, because people's idea is like by then you should be self-sufficient, especially after graduating high school and college. But again, with the job market and economy that we have been so graciously left, that we're all experiencing, I think that sentiment and stigma is on its way out. And like culturally, we're getting to a point where it is a little bit more acceptable and understandable given the situation, which has honestly kind of shifted that dialogue internally, because now not as many people outwardly are going to say anything about you living at home with your parents. But from what I've heard of friends, family, and y'all, a lot of that dialogue of like feeling the shame of like, oh, I should be moving out by now, or like you feel like you're behind, or like having your adult development be arrested is coming from inside the house. And by inside the house, I mean inside the house. It's you telling yourself that, babes. And I feel like if that is the case, if that does sound like you, then you need to give yourself some grace.
I just want people to, in general, especially Gen Z, like I have a sister who's like younger Gen Z. I want people to feel okay with just having different benchmarks than maybe our parents did. I think every situation is valid. It's really just figuring out what makes sense for you and what's best for you and what is hopefully financially feasible if it's something you want to do. And if you are serious about home ownership, whether you're doing it by yourself, whether you're doing it with a partner, just having those conversations, even if you have to have them like 50 times, it's the best way to go in with a clear head and a plan. Everyone has different situations, so I don't like to assume that like one situation outweighs the other, but I hope people feel okay that where they're at in life is not linear, kind of like you said.
Like, we know that owning a home is a luxury, but I'd argue in major cities, because the market is so bad, to be able to rent your own place is a flex and is a luxury. Because the reality is, for a lot of Americans, we don't have the safety net to help pay, cover costs, and guide us through the process of homeownership. And I think the most important part of this section is to highlight the fact that everyone is truly on a different path. And I don't say that to be woo-woo, I mean that to be like real. Like, everyone is on a different path, on a different timeline, and there shouldn't be a pressure to be at a certain place before you are ready, and not because everyone around you is ready. Like, you have to be ready to make that decision for yourself, because you are the one that is going to be, one, footing the bill, and two, living with that decision. And I asked everyone I interviewed whether they owned a home or not, what their peers' living situations were and their takes on that, and this is what they said.
A lot of my friends actually own houses, but they rent an apartment.
I'm like trying to think of anyone even within 5 years of me. I don't think I know anyone that owns a house or is even thinking of owning.
Because as you can see, everyone has their preferences and should and can do what they want. Now for this next stage of the video, I do have to hop on my high horse. I do have to cape for Gen Z right now against the other generations because I'm just a little confused. And this is a section I will call the Gen Z scarlet letter of actually becoming an adult. As we know, and as we've talked about, this generation did not get the payout of adulthood that we thought we would. Going to college, getting one or multiple degrees, working hard in the legs for inflation to go up, minimum wage to stay the same, the prices of everything going up, seemingly just for fun. And as we mentioned, we as Gen Z tend to take things like that are typical like negatives and spin them into positives or just meme on them on social media. Hence the whole Gen Z and corporate content vertical, which in turn spawned the whole like Gen Z doesn't want to work discourse. That is what I like to call the Gen Z work scarlet letter. However, and if you're familiar with the scarlet letter, it's basically like this brand that's put on you that's meant to symbolize like shame and like shunning, because that's essentially what was happening to Gen Z in the workforce. People were seeing younger people or Gen Z and assuming that because they were Gen Z, that they're lazy, they don't want to work, and they're not responsible. That's fine and dandy. We've handled that in another video. It's just interesting to see that that same principle is being carried over to other aspects of life. Namely, when it comes to other indicators of adulthood, like, per se, housing. It's kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation where like if you don't want to buy a home or like get your own place or can't do those things, you're seen as not meeting the moment and like not being an adult. But also if you are someone who is able to do that and wants to do that, you're looked at as like not experienced and like immature and not competitive. So it's like, which is it?
I had a close family member that was not very supportive, that didn't really think that we were being serious, and that thought, you're just too young for this. And even some loan agents, some people when we were touring houses treated it like we were just, playing around, like we just weren't being serious and like we weren't ready for the next step. And we got the same thing when we got married. So we were kind of used to it at that point. Like people just don't take you seriously until you do it. So we're just like, okay, we just got to do it and show them that, we are serious.
I had a bad realtor and I had a really good realtor. I don't think they're both bad in their own way, but the first one was bad where she wouldn't even put in my offers. What the situation was that made me fire her, because you can fire a realtor, which is great. And we went to a home. I loved it. The woman had to leave like immediately. She like broke her leg. It was a condo. She broke her leg and she couldn't get up and down the stairs. And she went over asking for that property. I'm making up numbers, but say she paid like $300,000. That was the original. And she went $350,000. So now she was selling it for like $460,000 because why not? And I was like, I'm not going to give you that much. I was like, I'll do $400,000. It's above what you originally paid. No problem. And my realtor refused to put the offer in. She was like, it's kind of a smack in the face to her because she put it at $460,000 and you're offering $400,000. I'm like, well, she wants to leave fast. I can do a quick move because it's only me. You don't have to worry about like, oh, we got to move the kids out of school. We can only do it in the summer. And she wouldn't put in my offer. So I left. And that woman still hasn't sold that home.
So when I was buying my house, you deal with your realtor and then also the like mortgage person, the loan officer. And I think that those people really thought that I was just going to be like super excited to own a home because I was like 22 and this is so exciting. And so I remember the realtor like really seeming surprised whenever like she took me to see certain house. And I was like, I don't think I want to live here. I don't love the neighborhood that much. The house seems kind of old, like different little things would come up. And I think she was genuinely pretty shocked by that. She was just like, we have to put an offer somewhere, it's a house, especially she showed me, I ended up buying a ton, but she showed me a few single family houses. She was just like, it's a whole house. And I was like, this house is like so old. It looks dusty. I don't want to live here, So I do think there was an expectation that I just be okay with things and also that I not be very, intentional in the process. I didn't know a ton about homeownership, but I knew enough to know like this is a huge thing that I'm doing. And so I asked a lot of questions, like with the down payment assistance, like I was asking, so how do these programs work? What's going to happen? Why should I choose this one over that one? And I remember one of the first loan officer that I worked with really didn't like that at all. So I ended up working with somebody else because I was like, you're going to answer my questions. I'm signing up for a lot of debt here. But yeah, definitely, I think there was an expectation because of my age that I just would kind of trust them to do everything, kind of just go along with everything and be just like, oh my God, I'm getting a house rather than, being someone who wanted to be informed.
And of course, these examples aren't every single case, but it is interesting to note that for some Gen Z, we're not being taken seriously in comparison to older families, and couples are just older people, regardless of if the credit, the co-signers, or the income is comparable. Like while it is still technically possible for young single people to own, it might be harder to get that pre-approval for a home loan. Generation Z, though still a small segment of the market, 3% of all buyers, have the highest share of single female home buyers at 30%. And like millennials, they tend to purchase older homes compared to other age groups. Gen Z is slowly entering the housing market with the lowest household income, and they're more likely to be single than other buyers. So absolutely, it's not impossible to buy a home being single or being Gen Z, but it definitely can be more challenging because you'd probably need a cosigner or hope that a couple isn't applying to that house as well because double income is more competitive, which actually leads to the next topic around how shockingly the loneliness epidemic, she keeps coming back around, and trash dating sphere in a roundabout way are also kind of tanking our chances at homeownership. I know. I didn't think that would be a sentence I would say either, but walk with me for a second.
This first graph shows just how bleak the current situation is. Back in 1970, half of 30-year-olds were married and homeowners. That's just unthinkable for Gen Z. Kids these days aren't just magically lazier than previous generations. We work just as hard as our parents did. And like them, we were raised to strive for the American dream. That's the promise of a stable and dignified life available to everybody who's willing to work hard for it. And the textbook example was homeownership. It's the place to raise your family and build the wealth that you'll pass on on to your kids. We're told to put in our 40 hours of work every single week, but work just doesn't pay like it used to. Americans haven't gotten a raise since the 1980s. Wages haven't increased faster than inflation and cost of living. So even if it seems like our paychecks are higher, we've got less left in our pockets after expenses like healthcare, housing, and insurance.
You know we love to talk about Gen Z and dating and love. It's one of my favorite topics ever. But truly, I say this all the time, but everything is connected. As we just talked about, buying a home on a single income is incredibly difficult as it is, and you may need a cosigner if you don't have an insane income. But a dual income home, a double earner, a dink if you will, or even a twink.
So me and my boyfriend were talking about money stuff earlier, and he was like, well, we shouldn't stress too much because we're twinks. I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, twinks. 2 income, no kids. And I'm like, it's dinks. We're not skinny gay men. Like, what do you...
Is more secure for payments and all the other costs that come with owning a home. So when we connect this with the Gen Z loneliness epidemic, where people just are statistically dating and getting in relationships less often, one definitely impacts the other. If people are more single and isolated now more than ever, with rising housing costs, then it would make sense that it would be harder than ever to become a home buyer because more people would just have single income as opposed to a dual income. Especially since these realtors and sellers prefer selling people with a better financial safety net, i.e. couples and families because of the multiple incomes, which just adds another barrier to people who just might want to buy their own home. And the irony here is that it's harder for single people to be actually alone, because if you have no friends, community, or partner, you might need to be a renter longer. And if you live in a city like LA, that might be just a room in like a 4-bedroom home. In fact, marriage is increasingly seen as something to opt in and out of, whether you're in one already or not. And these days, the choice for young people largely seems to be opt out. The average age that adults are getting married in the United States has significantly increased since the 1950s, with marriage rates in general on the decline. Meanwhile, Pew Research Center found that in 2021, a record 25% of 40-year-olds have never been married, up from just 6% in 1980. These stats suggest a growing number of young adults in their 20s and 30s are delaying or foregoing marriage altogether, with Gen Z having lower rates of marriage or being in couples due to things like the rise of independence and other various reasons. It makes it harder to imagine or strategize home ownership without that secondary income. Again, not saying that it's impossible, but definitely more difficult, because adding another person gives you more cards. Maybe their parents could be co-signers, or they've saved for a down payment. And if you have a stable and secure partner, that does make the process a lot easier. So like maybe since like we're not getting married, let's like forego like the lavender weddings and start picking up like lavender home ownership. Who wants to be my co-signing beard? And it's just really interesting to see how like our avoidance is bleeding into housing, because one thing about our generation, a lot of us are avoidant, and we can see that a bit in our living situations. When I talk to people about the prospect of being a homeowner, something that comes up a lot is like not wanting to be tied down, not wanting to commit to one place or a city for too long, which is valid, but still, yeah, it's like the concept of not wanting to put all your cards in one basket and commit to one place without really thinking about the long-term strategy of it all, if that's something that you ideally want. Now, I wanted to end this video off with a conversation around generational wealth, because I think that's an important part of this whole conversation, because I think that's a large reason around why we see the patterns in wanting to buy a house or an apartment or whatever or not, because there are definitely some systems at play that have historically prohibited and continues to discourage people of color, women, and other marginalized groups from owning property. People of color have historically been dissuaded from ownership, and that kind of thinking, like always wanting to rent as opposed to buying a home, gets passed down generationally, because you tend to aspire to things in your immediate vicinity, the people and things that you see around you.
Yeah, so growing up, we always lived in apartments. We moved a lot, actually. Not always apartments, always rented. Never, my mother didn't own. And so because of that, I knew that like people with more money owned homes. And so I kind of had this idea that like one day I'll probably make more money and own a house, but it was not really like a specific goal in any way. I didn't really know too many people who own homes growing up, so it wasn't something I was really thinking about.
And there are many factors that have contributed to this, with some of the main ones being government policies that have historically supported white homeownership, but did not do the same for black families, discrimination for private mortgage companies withholding services from red light neighborhoods, and offering higher rates and fees to minority borrowers, and finally, the economic well-being just generationally. White families have had the means to pass family inheritance, income, property, etc., whereas statistically Latino and black families get less assistance from relatives or intergenerational inheritance than white Americans, which makes sense because we historically historically have not been on the upper hand of the economy and wealth building. If you or your family have been lifelong renters, it's easy to see why you might carry this mindset. And if you think that that's the best for your personal life and situation, then that's not a bad thing. But I think the purpose I want to serve in this video is to open up the conversation more and maybe see things outside of what we have traditionally seen as possible for us, even throughout this particularly frustrating time. I think it's also good to see and to know that home ownership isn't solely a individual thing or like a skill issue. Like by and large, it is kind of bigger than us. And when it is possible and represented for us, a lot of home buyers do have assistance, which again also is not a bad thing, but it's just to show that if buying a home or even like renting an apartment for you isn't a possibility for you right now, when it is for others, there are other external factors at play. But regardless of everything that's going on in the world, it is still important for us as young adults to take stock of our finances and our mentality surrounding housing, to reframe our personal narrative and exercise our personal choice to see what fits best for ourselves. This is to say that you don't have to take the general sentiment of, oh, we're screwed regardless. Don't even think about buying a house or like renting that apartment in this lifetime, because while those things can be true, they also are not the ultimate truth. As like many things in this life, we're all dealt a different deck of cards, and what we do with those cards is up to us and our business alone. So yes, while the state of the world has drastically impacted Gen Z's housing options, it is up to us to redefine what we want and where we're going from here.
Isolation is a death sentence for many of us.
One thing I was not expecting after I got married was how lonely the entire experience really is.
Do you ever get lonely? Yeah, I think everyone gets lonely. That's almost like a daily struggle.
I am so lonely, like so deeply craving, like...
So she's talking about how being really, really deeply lonely makes it harder for you to make friends, and that couldn't be any more true.
Gen Z is going through a loneliness epidemic, and it's time we talk about it. Hey guys, it's Up's Emergency and welcome back to my channel. Today we're back and we're talking about Gen Z. Specifically some discourse that I've been seeing going around the internet about Gen Z's loneliness issue or loneliness epidemic, because at least for me, this has been something that I've been noticing that's been going on for a while, and thankfully I've been seeing some more content talking about this, so I just really wanted to chime in to keep the conversation going, to talk about what's been going on with Gen Z in regards to loneliness and connection, the impacts of that loneliness, why Gen Z is going through this in the first place, whether that be from social media, a lack of intimacy, or just a general lack of community, as well as finally trying to figure out how we can get out of this and fix this loneliness epidemic. So before we get into any of that, hello, my name's Rumi and you're watching imergency, a little series that I run on this channel where I talk about all things related to Gen Z, whether that be media, trends, or just general things in entertainment. So if you like that kind of content and are new around here, then definitely subscribe, leave a like on this video because it helps out a ton, and follow me on my socials at imergency on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, where I've been posting up a store. And if weekly videos aren't enough for you and you want to support this channel and get some exclusive additional content, then consider hitting the join button and becoming a channel member today. Channel members get access to every single video, as well as getting 2 additional exclusive show review videos a month. So far in the catalog, we have shows and movies like Everything Now, Heartstopper, and Bottoms. So if that's of any interest to you and you want to continue to support the channel, then consider doing that. But with all that aside, let's talk about the Gen Z loneliness epidemic. So what's been going on with Gen Z? If you are a fellow member of Gen Z, have you been feeling this sense of loneliness lately, or have been for a long periodically time, whether or not you have a solid group of friends or people that you see in your life? Just this general feeling of aloneness, lacking connection, or just lacking the feeling of being truly known? If so, you may also be a victim of the loneliness epidemic. Gen Z by and large has been going through what some have been calling the loneliness epidemic. This widespread phenomenon of feeling just more distant and alone both socially and physically than ever before. And as a member of Gen Z, I can definitely second this, like I have been going through this as well. With the world being as it is and with our culture and society becoming more and more isolating, it's understandable why we'd feel this way. And it's not even specifically the concept of having people around you and being around people, because even with having people in your life and having people around you, you can still feel this sense of loneliness and aloneness for multiple reasons, which we're going to get into a little bit later. This video is actually inspired by a really great Atlantic article written by Derek Thompson called Why Americans Suddenly Stopped Hanging Out, and it touches on themes revolving around the whole concept of hanging out, third spaces, or doing things physically together has declined over time and over generations, stating that the steepest declines have been among young people, poor people, and Black Americans. Women and 20-somethings enjoy the most amount of social time in a given week, and low-income, middle-aged, and unmarried men seem to be getting together the least. Thompson also goes on to state that teens and young adults saw by far the largest dip in socializing, especially since 2010, which is really interesting because I feel like media tends to frame this loneliness epidemic as really stemming from 2020 and us moving into a post-lockdown world. So seeing that this has been an issue that's been getting progressively worse for quite some time now, I'm not sure if that's necessarily more reassuring or more frightening. And while talking about socializing specifically is interesting, I feel like specifically when it comes to things like dating, we're seeing that by and large, teens are dating less, playing fewer youth sports, spending less time with their friends, and making fewer friends in general. With the article going as far to say that in the 1970s, more than half of 12th graders got together with their friends almost every day, but by 2017, only 28% did. Gen Z is just by and large spending less time with friends, making friends, in relationships, and going out and finding relationships and dating. Like if you look online, there is a plethora of content revolving around the dating crisis that Gen Z is going through and why the dating landscape looks as bad as it does for our generation. People are lonely, people are looking for a connection, and this chronic isolation and just general lack of connection can be very harmful. And not to make a crazy pivot, but one way that loneliness can be fought off is through self-love. And luckily for you, this video sponsor adamandeve.com can help you with exactly that. Adamandeve.com has been in business for over 50 years and has a wide assortment of things that you can use for your pleasure to practice some self-love. And they have a little something for everybody, some for the girls, some for the guys, something for everybody in between. So if you want to support this channel and get 50% off, you can go to adamandeve.com and use code RUMI. That's spelled R-U-M-I to get 50% off one item of your choosing and free shipping in the US and Canada. There are some exclusions that may apply. Everything in adamandeve.com comes in discreet packaging and with a 90-day hassle-free return policy, so you don't have to worry about anyone being in your business when it comes to your self-love. So if you're ready to go on that journey, be sure to check out adamandeve.com. Thanks so much, Adam and Eve, for sponsoring this section of the video and helping us combat our loneliness. It's time to get back into the video and talk about the impacts of said loneliness. The thing about loneliness is that it's not just something that's going on in your head. It's not just mental, and prolonged feelings of loneliness and isolation can actually negatively impact your health. There is an abundance of information, so many studies that show that loneliness can be detrimental to your health. Loneliness can make you prone to things like depression and anxiety, impair your cognitive function and memory over time, weaken your immune system, among many other things. And I'm not just saying this to scare you, I'm just saying this to really highlight how important connection really is to us, and the fact that we as Gen Z are going through these feelings of loneliness collectively just is not healthy, and we need to do something about it. Something needs to be done about it. Which brings me to my next question. Why is Gen Z so particularly lonely? And there are actually multiple explanations for why this may be. Gen Z has grown up in an increasingly distanced and isolated world. And while you may think, yeah, we have like social media and things are more global than they ever have been before, that also can be a double-edged sword. Because we are so global and because we are able to connect and find friends all over the world, that distance is still real. Like I have friends and mutuals from all over the country and all over the world, but that doesn't mean that I see them all on a day-to-day basis because they are all over the country and all over the world. Like I can barely get friends that live in the same city to hang out more than once a week. And that's for friendships that are already established. Like making new friends, especially as a young adult, is so difficult because making connection nowadays is so difficult. And that's mainly because we don't actually have the spaces to do that. And genuine connections require a certain level of intentionality, which is a high barrier of entry for a lot of people. Speaking to the first point, we've seen an almost erasure of third places. And you may be asking, Rumi, what is a third place? According to Wikipedia, a third place refers to the social surroundings that are separate from the two usual social environments of home and the workplace. You can really think of these as any place that isn't your workplace or your home. Like think like a cafe, a park, a club, anywhere that you can do an activity with others that doesn't revolve around you trying to make money. And when I say that third places are being erased, I don't mean necessarily that these places are non-existent. It just means that we have less and less time and space to go seek out these third places and to find connection in these spaces because of the way that society is currently set up. One of my good friends and mutuals, Amanda Mariana, has made an amazing video talking all about third spaces. I'll link that down below and you should definitely go check that out. But for the sake of this video, I feel like third spaces are just so important for connection because they are spaces where you can just be. Like you're not at home either alone or with like family or at work doing work obligated things. Like you're simply existing, enjoying shared interests, ideally with other people who also have those same shared interests, and really get to have and develop those human moments that don't revolve around you making money or doing the things that you need to do to actually survive. And I feel like there has been a push to sort of socially engineer these third places or make an intention to help people make friends, have these organic experiences, friend mixers, or like going to events that are geared towards like making friends and having like a social life. But this one creator, Catherine, made a really good video talking about this and going a little further in it, but I just kind of feel like those are kind of missing the point and kind of fall flat because like, yeah, you can go and meet all these people, but like, then what? You know, like the whole magic of like a third place, a third space is that there is something that you are doing that you're actually interested in, and you're able to meet like-minded people that are also doing that thing, and you can form a relationship because you do this thing at this place that is unrelated to the other aspects of your life. But when they have these mixers and you show up, the only thing you really know that you have in common for sure is that y'all all just don't have friends. And that's really broad and it can lead to definitely some connection, but by and large superficial connection because you're spending a lot of time doing small talk, trying to figure out what this person likes as opposed to generally having a vibe at more interest-based or organic forms of connection and entertainment in the form of a third place.
I'll tell you one thing, we are not going to make it out of this friendship recession by hosting community events that are just branded around making friends, like so blatantly. I don't know if you've seen these around where you live, but like there will just be community gatherings that are exclusively, like explicitly just for like, come here, meet people, make friends. And like that might seem like a strategic way to go about it, but actually I think it just like further illuminates how little we actually know in this modern age about forming like meaningful connections and friendship. Like it is just not a sustainable practice to have a bunch of strangers come together without any common theme, common interests, and expect them to just bump around like a bunch of atoms and hopefully they'll make a molecule. Like,
and all of that I've said about finding a third place, finding a third space, like finding some form of connection with friends is honestly a luxury for a lot of people in modern society, specifically for older Gen Z. There just is not a lot of free time to be exploring this. And this aspect specifically isn't something that's necessarily exclusive to Gen Z because I feel like working conditions suck across the board for everybody, but especially in the formative years of young adulthood where you're trying to establish yourself and figure out who you are, having long working hours, maintaining your life and obligations, and just doing day-to-day things that you need to keep up with those other aspects of your life is time consuming. It makes it incredibly difficult to connect, especially when you consider that a lot of people in that similar position have conflicting schedules and are doing the same thing. So it's even harder to find time to make friends and connect. Like I know, like it's a long-standing joke about adulthood. That's not really a joke, but like the fact that you can go from in high school and college where you see your friends practically every day, or at least once a week, to having to fight to pencil in some time to hang out once a month or once every other month, or even less, just because of time and scheduling conflicts. And that's not to say that necessarily everybody's busy, because let's be real, there are also times and also people that have the free time but just don't really know what to do with it because of the aforementioned not knowing who, where, how to connect. And it just kind of seems easier, less time consuming, and less stressful to just hang out at home. And to sort of address both of those things, I feel like one solution that I personally love but isn't really necessarily talked about enough is the whole concept of parallel play. And again, shout out to my friend Amanda because I remember watching one of her videos a while back where she talks about the concept of parallel play. And at that time I didn't know exactly what that was, but I knew that's exactly what I wanted and was looking for in my adult relationships. So if you don't know what parallel play is a concept coined by child development experts that can be also applied to adult relationships and for children. For young people, parallel play occurs where children are sharing a play space but doing different activities. And for adults, it's gonna be how we do things day to day, whether it be at work, in our free time, or just with our regular routines. Like for me, my optimal form of parallel play are doing things in the same room as friends, but not doing the exact same thing, like not doing them together, if that makes sense. Like when it comes to work, one thing that I used to really love to do when I was working a corporate job was to meet up with friends who also worked remote and just do our work in the same room. We don't necessarily need to be talking to each other, but we're just in the same room getting our tasks done. And just something about that would be so satisfying and so fulfilling. And it's so easy and lightweight to do. Like just doing things together with people that don't necessarily need to be super involved. Like it could be mundane things that you have to do, just doing it with someone else, like grocery shopping, doom scrolling, going on a walk with headphones, listening to your own music. Like of course this isn't going to be like the fix all for everything, but at least I think it could help us make time or squeeze in time for connection where it doesn't have to be like this involved plan or event that takes time away from the things that you have to do that would normally prevent you from hanging out with friends. Like parallel play is one of the reasons why I really value my friendship with my friend Asante, especially when I first moved out here to LA, because LA is known for being notoriously isolating and lonely, and moving here without having a lot of friends was kind of daunting and I didn't really know nobody. When I was just getting started here, Asante and I would just literally hang out all the time and just do the most mundane things together. Like whether that be just going to the gym, doing errands, grocery shopping, or this one isn't really mundane, but like going to events. It really helped me personally feel connected and fought off a lot of the loneliness that was coming around that time and the loneliness that's to be expected whenever you go to a new space. So shout out to Asante, but yeah, I'm a heavy proponent for parallel play, although I do acknowledge that still might be difficult with people's conflicting schedules. Then kind of going along with something I was saying before, we have this whole paradox of hyperconnectivity. The feeling of being connected and not at the same time. Having the world and so many people disposable at your fingertips, but also feeling desperately alone whenever it comes down to it. And that's because with social media, I feel like we have this strong pull to connect with people without actually having any actual connection. Like, yeah, you can have all these friends that you have online, that you've made online, or even friends that you have in real life that you haven't seen in a while, but know that you can easily access them online, but still don't. Like, because we feel like we'd be bothering them, we don't really have that connection like that to be hanging out, even though we both established that we at least on some level like each other, or in a kind of dystopian kind of way, we feel that they're doing well so that we shouldn't check up on them, have conversations with them because we already see what's going on in their lives. And I feel like this is honestly a big one. And I'm guilty of this too, but because we're so used to seeing social media as like this highlight reel and always posting updates, whether that be just like you posting something on Be Real or you posting your Instagram stories, Twitter, whatever it may be, there can be this hesitancy to reach out and just call someone to like catch up and connect because you feel like, well, I've already seen how their life is going, how things are going for them on their social media. So I don't want to call or like initiate a hangout where we catch up because like I've already seen everything. And it seems like they're doing really well. And then if you take it to like a different spot in your mind, that may not be the healthiest, but no shade, we all do it. You then start thinking, well, they're doing really well. And if you're not necessarily doing well in that instance, you're like, oh, you know, I don't want to reach out and bring that negative energy if they're on a high right now and I'm on a low. But that's like the issue with social media because we really do view it as like this highlight reel. So people really just aren't reaching out to each other, really forming those connections in the same way, promoting these feelings of loneliness because we think that we know how people are doing based on what they're posting on social media. When in reality, that's not the case. I can attest to this. You can be going through the worst era of your life. Like you can be struggling and going through it, but make it seem like it's all perfect on social media. Make it seem like you're doing so well on social media. And because it is that way, people may feel less inclined to check up on you because they think everything's going fine. So either we need to start being more real and authentic or just pick up the phone and call Bestie. Text Bestie, be like, oh, hey girl, you all right? Everything good? How are things going? Like, I think we need to be more okay with letting people tell us that they are okay. Letting people tell us that things are going great for them because until they say that to us, to our face, until we have that connection where we can reach out, catch up, we don't know that for real. For the baddies that be running up and down LinkedIn, keeping up with what everyone's doing, this goes double for you. And now I kind of want to dive into some of the roots behind this loneliness, why we feel this deep sense of loneliness, even when we can be around other people. And I feel like by and large, it comes down to intimacy. And I'm just gonna come out and say it. Intimacy is something that everyone wants, but everyone doesn't know how to necessarily articulate or know themselves that that is what they want. Because I feel like intimacy is like shrouded in this connotation of it being something that is like sexual in nature, when in reality, no. The definition of intimacy is close familiarity or friendship, emphasizing closeness, just feeling close to somebody. And I feel like sometimes we substitute like quantity of friendships over the quality of friendship. Because this is especially true for people that have a lot of friends but always feel alone, like the popular loner archetype of people. Because of all the reasons that I've gotten into in this video, for one, finding friends is hard. Finding friends of substance is even harder. And then the third added piece of finding friends that you feel like you can be vulnerable with enough to have those intimate connections with is even more difficult. Like there are layers to this. Like personally, there are times where I feel so lonely. Like personally, despite like the support systems that I have going on and the friends and family that are around me, I still find myself in times where I just feel so lonely. And it's been so hard to describe because I feel like sometimes I shouldn't feel that way. And it's taken me some time to understand what I mean when I say that and what I mean when I feel that way. And through a lot of introspection and through a lot of therapy, shout out therapy, I found that a lot of that feeling is from like a general lack of intimacy. Like creating an environment where just regular phone check-ins are normalized in a friendship. Spontaneous hangouts, coffee chats, or just general little things that make the difference. Like building and sustaining relationships that have that level of care and knowing that the people around me care for me in the same way that I care for them, and to know and be validated in the sense that like they want to get to know me and they're actually taking the time to get to know who I am on a foundational level. Like that is what fulfills that loneliness for me. That is what intimacy looks like for me. Like having those close relationships, having that validation, having that reassurance, that really does help. And I must admit that is not a commodity. Like that doesn't happen all the time and with everybody. And those types of friendships and relationships are so hard to have because they require such a level of vulnerability, which is scary for myself and for a lot of people. So for a lot of us, it's easier to just not do all that and just keep things either surface level or to ourselves, which might I say does contribute to the male singleness issue, because I feel like a lot of times men don't want to be open about their feelings or really be open at all because of the way that the social systems are set up. Although I will say that men themselves did create those specific social systems where it's not okay to be vulnerable and be open, specifically with other men. Like, I've been seeing so many TikToks and things online about like male friendships not being super deep, like not really knowing things about your other male friends, not showing up to your male friends' birthday parties, or being able to communicate that those things hurt because masculinity is inherently not vulnerable and super strong and tough and distant.
I made this video telling men if they want to get a girlfriend, they should really focus on getting friends first. And so many of the comments from men were like, no, never mind. I'll just do neither. Spend all my time in the gym. We are at a point in the culture where men would rather go their own way than repair their own relationship to intimacy and to women. Like, genuinely, they have been fed a script that being alone and isolated is more like restorative or good than trying to make friends and opening up to people and like being vulnerable.
Intimacy, vulnerability. Let's get to work. But yeah, I also feel like loneliness does stem from lack of community, and different communities face loneliness very differently. Like, I can speak specifically for the queer community. The queer community has a different form of loneliness, and a lot of that can stem from a lack of community. Like, I know so many queer people that have some amazing friends that they can feel super connected to, super vulnerable with. They happen to be straight, but never feel really connected or accepted into the queer community, or finding a community that is unapologetically queer. Like, I know for gay people specifically, there's this whole idolization of having like a gay friend group, and a lot of times those gay friend groups that are idolized tend to look a little homogenous, which can be excluding for a lot of people, because a lot of queer folk really want that form of community, to having a space to connect with other queer people and share those lived experiences and share those cultural identifiers that really solidify and bring together the queer community, but not being able to fit into those in groups or find those like people to be in community with, which can create its own set of loneliness around identity, which I find so fascinating. And the same can be said for people of any identity and just this general need for community. Like, humans inherently are communal creatures. Like, we are meant to connect and to socialize. And the fact that that's so hard to do now just can't be good for us. And it makes sense why we feel the way we do. It makes sense why we're having this loneliness epidemic. But with all that said, what can be done about this? What can we do to help solve our loneliness? I don't have the answers. I don't have all the answers, because trust me, I wouldn't be here if I did. But there are some things that I've looked up and have seen worked in my life and my circles that could potentially help, but I also do feel like an individualized approach to a more systemic or social issue isn't going to fix it for everybody and isn't going to fix it long term. And I want to acknowledge that. Like, things definitely need to change within like the work-life balance structure of the world right now, as well as the spaces that are around right now to facilitate friendship and connection. But on an individual level, we can all make more of an effort to try and connect authentically and meaningfully, like being really intentional about the relationships that we're pursuing, continuing, and nurturing, whether that be taking the initiative and reaching out to that person you've been having a friend crush on for a while or having an actual crush on for a while, being more vulnerable with the people that are in your life and pouring more into people in your daily life, checking up on them more, as well as trying to incorporate people in your day-to-day life more than you already are. More of that parallel play, like inviting your friends to go grocery shopping with you, inviting your friends or people around you to go do things that are mundane and that both of you were probably going to do anyway. And most importantly, initiate. Even when you feel annoying, and I know this one could be real tough. I know this one could be the most cringy and uncomfortable thing in the world, but I'll say this. It's better to initiate and feel annoying, but be socially fulfilled, than to not be annoying and to be easygoing, but be lonely as hell. Okay? So yeah, maybe we all need to reach out a little bit more, take a little bit more initiative. And yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say on that. I could make a whole video talking about how loneliness really affects relationships, like romantic relationships, because I feel like for this video it was very much so platonic and generalized relationships. So if you'd like to see a follow-up video on that specifically, then let me know in the comments. But yeah, what do you think about all this? Do you feel like there's a loneliness epidemic? And if so, how has it been impacting you? How have you been trying to deal with it? Let's crowdsource some stories and solutions down in the comment section below. Again, if you're new, thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe, leave a like on this video, and to follow me on my socials at imergency. Also, don't forget to check out adamandeve.com and get 50% off of one item of your choosing by using code RUMI. Other than that, y'all, I've been Emergency, and I will see you in the next video. Peace. Hey, how you doing? Hey guys, it's Emergency, and welcome back to my channel. I'm sick, and I've been sick for about a week now, which is why there were no posts last week. And we're going into week 2 of this. I'm feeling a lot better, but I'm still not 100%. And I'm supposed to be traveling to Houston in a couple of days. So instead of leaving you in the dark for 2 full weeks, I decided it might be fun to film a lo-fi video, just really low stakes. We're gonna be talking about White Lotus, giving a recap and thoughts on season 1 and 2, and then predictions, thoughts into season 3, and then maybe do a little bit of analysis, getting into like the social commentary of it all and how it really does portray wealth, whiteness, and privilege and sort of turns those concepts in on each other. But yeah, we're not getting into the political and economic state of the world as we normally do on this channel. And you know, as usual, before we get into anything, if you're new to the channel, definitely subscribe. Leave a like on this video because it helps a ton with the YouTube algorithm. Follow me on my socials at imergency on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And consider clicking the join button here or here to become a channel member today. I posted a Heartstopper Season 2 review last week, and next week channel members are getting a Bottoms review, the movie. And you also get early access to videos like these before they get publicly uploaded, as well as shout out at the end of every one of these videos. It's a really good time, so you should definitely consider it. But let's talk about White Lotus. Now, everyone's been telling me to watch White Lotus for the longest time, and I never really got it. Like, I'd always watch up until like episode 2 of season 1, and then just cut it off because I just couldn't get through it. Because in my mind, I feel like the way that it was advertised on social media, or at least the way that people have been popularizing it, like the clips that go viral, made it seem like it's this intense show, or it's like this show that like gets really dark and it's just like dark throughout the entire show, when in reality I feel like White Lotus, it's one of those shows that like builds up to the finale. Like everything is building up to the finale, so I feel like it very much follows the general like storytelling arc of like the intro, exposition, then rising action, and then leaving climax and resolution for like the last episode or two. And that kind of caught me off guard because I felt like White Lotus was just very slow when I first watched it. But then I have to say, I want to say 2 weeks ago I gave it a second watch, like, because you know, I was here. I didn't have anywhere else to go. So I sat down and I watched the entire first season, and I got it. I understood. I got the appeal. And then I was like, okay, let me watch season 2. Let me catch up on season 2. And that is when the I got it turned into I love it, because I personally feel like I can call myself a solid White Lotus stan now, because I feel like season 1 was cool, but season 2 was such a great season. That is television right there. But I'm sure if you're watching this video, then you already know this. So let's do a little recap, shall we? Because it's been a minute. Before we get into the season 3 cast announcements, predictions for plot, and blah, 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 blah. So season 1 follows about 3 storylines, I believe. Well, maybe 4, actually. So you have the storyline revolving around the family, with the 2 parents, 2 kids, one of them being Sydney Sweeney and the friend, and their adventures and trials and tribulations. The father is having like some kind of midlife crisis because he found out that his dad was secretly DL and ended up passing from AIDS. The mom's going through stuff because she's desperately trying to hold this family together through her trip while also being a corporate baddie. And she just eventually just gets overwhelmed because no one is really thinking or caring about her, and they're all obsessed with their own adventures. Sydney Sweeney's character Olivia and her friend Paula are honestly trying to live their lives on the island, checking Olivia's parents for being mildly racist and problematic, as well as tea going on between the two of them because Olivia has a serious superiority complex around Paula, which leads to them falling out, and Paula falling for a boy and incentivizing said boy to steal from that family. Yeah, there is a lot going on now that I say that out loud. Like, the show gets down, they don't play. And then the younger brother Quinn, who is off doing literally any and everything. He like finds his tribe with like the native Hawaiians and goes rowing with them. And there's a lot to be said about his character because he has a lot, but also nothing going on at the same time. Then you have the second group being a couple, Rachel and Shane, who are newlyweds. Shane basically being a nepo baby to the most derogatory degree, and Rachel being young, trying to figure out her own life and getting into this marriage, not being of the same socioeconomic status. Then the third group, and honestly one of my favorite groups, is Tanya, who's played by the iconic Jennifer Coolidge, Greg, and Belinda, who's played by the iconic Insecure actress Natasha Rothwell. And their tea is that Tanya is at this resort in order to bury her mother, or to spread her mother's ashes in the ocean, and Belinda's there to help her with that because Tanya promises Belinda that she's going to invest in Belinda's spa business. Spoiler alert, that doesn't end up happening. And then finally, the fourth group I could argue is Armand himself and his legion of hotel twinks, one of them being played by Lucas Gage. What I really like about season 1 is how well the storylines really intersect with each other while also giving them their own space to sort of flesh out. Like, it doesn't feel like they're always constantly combining with each other. In fact, it really does give the experience that we're witnessing just like multiple people's hotel experience, and the fact that they don't necessarily have to be related to each other. Like with the family situation, their overarching issue is that they don't want to be honest with each other and really be who they are. Like, for example, like I said, the dad is going through crisis and goes through this kick of wanting to be ultra vulnerable but also not knowing how to really appear that way for his kids. Olivia, the daughter, goes through this thing of trying to hold her parents accountable for their actions and try and hold herself accountable for her actions for being a white person in Hawaii, but then ultimately decides after being called out by Paula to just honestly embrace her privilege and to stop trying to be someone that she's not. And I find that very interesting because I feel like at the very end of this season, we kind of see her have a full circle where she's just okay back in her performativeness, but I think a lot of that comes from Paula, because Paula I feel like is one of the most complex characters in that group, I'd say, because she's an outsider to the family and she's able to like see what is going on and being like the one person of color around this rich white family. She sees how things go down. She tries to find allyship and friendship with Olivia, but because of their cultural differences, because of the way that they were raised differently, like, that just doesn't necessarily translate, and the dynamics between the two of them that get conveyed that are explained also kind of play into that, because like I was saying before, Olivia has this sort of superiority complex with Paula in the sense that she feels like Paula could never have anything that's better than her, making it seem as though she views Paula as less than, and being that like Olivia is here and Paula is there should never be a time where Paula is here, or even here, to be honest. Like, she should always be below her. So in the show, how this manifests is whenever Paula gets male attention or talks to a guy, Olivia will go and talk to that same guy and try and get with that same guy and steal him away from Paula, because Paula can't have that leg up on Olivia. And I can honestly go so much deeper into this because I feel like the family's relationship is so interesting and complex, especially with the argument scene. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to move on and just give a simple recap for what happened that season. Essentially, big picture, the family gets robbed by Paula's love interest. Paula never gets explicitly caught by the family, but Olivia catches her. And they end up going home, except for the son, who stays back and joins that rowing crew. Tanya ends up finding this guy, Greg, that she falls head over heels for, ditches Belinda, and ends up going back home to LA. The young couple and Armand, the hotel manager, end up getting into this sort of war with each other, where they try and one up each other by doing each other dirty. Very much corporate Tom and Jerry, but eventually the stunts on each other go too far when Armand goes to defecate and urinate in Shane, the husband's, luggage, to which Shane ends up accidentally stabbing and killing Armand. And the young couple ends up reconciling their differences, and the wife ends up deciding to agree to be a trophy wife after rebelling against him the whole season. There's also more to that I'm glossing over. And the whole time before Armand unfortunately was unalived, he was a substance addict, essentially taking the substances from Olivia and Paula's backpack and having intercourse with the Twink Hotel employees. That's a lot for season 1, I know. Moving on to season 2. And like I said, season 1 was a great setup. Season 1 was a great pilot season. And I feel like what season 1 did well, season 2 really picked up and ran with, because I feel like season 2 was a lot less conventionally boring. I feel like from the start there was more going on, and I feel like a lot of that is contributed to the themes of each season. Like, I feel like season 1 was very much attributed to wealth and money, whereas season 2 was more positioned, and the theme of season 2 was more so around sex. And as we know, sex sells. It tends to be more overtly messy, and that is what season 2 was. It was a bunch of messiness. This season had a lot more storylines, because there are also just like a lot of characters this season. You have the two couples, Cameron and Daphne, as well as Ethan and Harper, who are there on like a double date vacation sort of vibe. You have Tanya back again, and I was so glad to see her in season 2. Greg, the gays, and her assistant. You have the DeGrasso family, as well as the hotel staff, this time the manager being Valentina, and the 2 adult workers. And really the only thing that's tying these groups together are the 2 adult workers, because the 2 adult workers are the ones that are melding through all of these groups. And you can use your imagination for what I mean by adult worker. I'm not trying to get demonetized, because Lucia and Mia have ties to the hotel, have ties to the DeGrasso family, have ties to the 2 couples. I think the only one they don't have direct ties to is Tanya's group, but kind of do tangentially, because Lucia and Albie get in a quick little relationship, and Tanya's assistant Portia is meant to be one of the love interests, is kind of love interest with Albie also. So yeah, very messy season. I feel like the highlights for season 2 for me were the 2 couples. Like, I could have watched the entire show just being on the 2 couples, because I feel like they were so interesting. And that mostly speaks to the performances of Aubrey Plaza, who played Harper. Actually, I was gonna break it up into individuals, but I feel like all 4 of them were just such great talent, and I feel like they portrayed their story so well. If you haven't seen the show, basically these 2 couples start off as polar opposites of each other, and eventually the theme of it all is that they become very similar in a sense to both survive. Because Daphne and Cameron are in a relationship where they're married and have kids, yet they don't have direct communication with each other and end up getting back at each other instead of actually communicating directly. So they end up cheating on each other, doing things without each other, knowing that it's going to upset them. Like, they have a very toxic relationship, not built on truth. Whereas Harper and Ethan's relationship is built primarily really on trust. However, they've lost their spark because they're very mundane and not as exciting. And essentially by the end of it, if you don't want spoilers, then skip past this part. They end up all cheating on each other with each other and lying to one another to eventually just become closer and sort of live in this whole ignorance is bliss sort of zone. And I just feel like their story was just so interesting. And another reason why I love this season so much more than season 1 is because I feel like the action and I feel like the stakes were just higher to begin with. Like I feel like we got to the good stuff a lot sooner and it stayed that way for a little bit longer. Like instead of like the last 2 episodes being the most shocking, I'd say like the latter half of this season. I think the season's like 7 episodes. So like the latter 4 are like very interesting, very messy. Because the DeGrasso family is also a mess. Because the dad has a sex addiction, which resulted in him cheating on his wife, which is why he's on this trip, because he's on a heritage trip, but also like to get away from the family. And really weird, but the dad and the son end up hooking up with the same person, that person being Lucia. Very strange. But I would be remiss if I did not talk about the relationship between Albie and Portia. I feel like I was so upset that they didn't become endgame and it was only alluded to them being together at the very end. And I'm mad that the Aussie came between the two of them because I feel like they were so good for each other. I feel like Albie was too nice guy-ish, and when he was explaining nice guy syndrome, he kind of gave me an ick, but I feel like they could have gotten past that and they could have worked on it. But I understand they needed a third to really switch things up. But I really loved Albie and Portia. I really loved Portia's character a lot, just because I feel like Portia was so real. Having to be Tanya's assistant and dealing with Tanya's craziness, along with having her own love life, is just amazing. Love that. Tanya's storyline, literally insane. I feel like they give her some of the most chaotic storylines just because we want to see Jennifer Coolidge in these insane scenarios. The show came out a year ago, so I'm not gonna hold back spoilers, I don't think. Like the whole meme that came out of the show with the gays are trying to kill me. Iconic. And wild how she ended up taking out all the gays. Like that was insane to me. And that whole plotline was just so interesting. The fact that like her husband Greg is actually the person that set her up to be unalived, yet she flipped the script and eventually was the one to end herself because she for some reason didn't know how to take a ladder down from the boat instead of jumping off the boat and hitting her head and drowning herself. Like crazy. But that plotline was amazing. I feel like some of the ones that were lacking for me were honestly the hotel staff one. Like the hotel staff one was cool and all, but I feel like the stuff with Valentina and Valentina coming out as a lesbian, but also like not knowing how to deal with that, then getting played, falling for a straight girl, and then falling for another straight girl who like led her on by pretending to be bisexual when really she was just like gay for pay. Like Valentina's story was just sad. Homegirl was going out sad. I kind of hate that for her. But yeah, I have to say that season 2 really did take it home for me. I was a huge fan of this season. And in my opinion, I feel like it was done a little bit better in terms of the plot, in terms of the score, in terms of the way that it was like shot. There are tons of like gorgeous scenes since they were in Italy. So I mean, like, how could you not? Also, can we talk about Albie for a second? I need to gush over Albie because I did not know where I recognized him from for the longest time, and it wasn't until very recently that I realized Albie is from The Order. For The Order stands, any Order stands in chat, like The Order was such a good show, and I'm so glad that Albie's in this because his actor eats. I loved him on The Order, and I loved him on season 2, which gets me so excited for season 3. We're talking about predictions now, friends, because season 3 is set to take place in Thailand. And I'm excited for Thailand because I feel like they can do very interesting things with Thailand. They said, allegedly, and by allegedly I mean according to this Elle article that I read, the theme of season 3 is supposed to revolve around death. So like I said, season 1 revolved around money, season 2 revolved around sex, and season 3 is supposed to revolve around death, which makes me hopeful that they bring back Tanya in some unserious way, like talking about some ghosts and spirits and stuff, because I feel like Tanya, Jennifer Coolidge, is one of the highlights of White Lotus. She's like White Lotus legacy, and I'm really sad that she's gone in the show. I hope she can come back in the form of like some kind of unserious spirit or something. But yeah, it makes me excited for season 3, having it be in Thailand and having it revolve around death, because I feel like it's going to get into some darker topics. And for one, the cast so far just seems like it's going to eat. Like we have Belinda from season 1 returning to this season, which makes me feel like she got transferred from Hawaii to Thailand. And I'm gonna be interested to see how she's changed after that, because it seemed at the end of season 1 that she was tired of rich people. So I'm excited to see how she's going to be at this other place for rich people. We also have a ton of new casts, and a lot of new casts from shows that we love and we've covered on this channel. We have Sarah Catherine Hook from First Kill, Amy Lou Wood from Sex Education. I am so excited for her. My words cannot explain how excited I am for her to be on this show. Nicholas DuVernay from Bel Air, and Lisa from Blackpink. Like, this is a insane cast. Insane cast. I feel like casting is like such an important part of any show. And I feel like especially for shows like this where they cycle out cast so much, it's important to have some heavy hitters. And based on the list that I've seen, I feel like we've got that. And I'm excited to see where things go. I honestly would like to see more people of color for this season. For the cast that I've seen so far, there haven't been super many. And that's honestly my main critique with this show. Season 2 did a little bit better of a job, but I feel like this show by and large is just so white. Like season 2 tried to do its big one by having like racially ambiguous characters. And they actually make a joke about this, like having it be Harper and Ethan, having them being a racially ambiguous couple. But like still by and large, like the show is pretty white. Like I'd love to see like a rich family of color be on the show and then have a lot of interactions to do with that, like them navigating that space, being a rich family of color with these other families that are white and having all these thoughts about them. And just, I would love to see that. And I feel like that would be a better barrier of entry for people, because I feel like that was one of the things that also kind of dissuaded me from starting the White Lotus, because I was like, why do I want to watch a bunch of rich white people do their thing? I understand it now. I get the appeal now. But in terms of hopes and dreams, like I hope eventually, I don't know if we're getting that in season 3, but if we do get a season 4, I want some color. I want a little bit more to this. But yeah, season 3 is supposed to come out in 2025, which is insane to say. But because of the writers and actors strike, things had to be pushed back. So 2025, which sounds atrocious. But I'm really excited for this season, y'all. I hope they expand upon season 2's greatness and bring that into season 3, because I feel like that would really take it home. But yeah, those are all the thoughts that I kind of got off the top of my mind right now. My mind's kind of going a little blank now and I'm getting a little tired. So I guess I'll wrap the video here, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Again, if you're new, subscribe, leave a like on the video, follow me on socials at imergency. Let me know what you think of White Lotus. Are you excited for season 3? What are you most excited for? Do you think it's going to be a hit without Jennifer Coolidge? Personally, I don't know, but let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below. Thanks again so much for watching. I've been Emergency, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.